Modena, 1978, Laura Ferrari's funeral. The church was full. Family, close friends, a few factory workers. In the front row sat one man, Enzo Ferrari, her husband, 55 years of marriage. In the back rows sat someone else. No one looked at her. No one asked who she was. The ceremony lasted 15 minutes. Enzo stood up, touched the coffin, silently, stood for 10 seconds, then turned, left. The woman in the back stayed longer. No one noticed. After the funeral, a factory worker asked, "Why did Signor Ferrari leave so early?" Someone else answered, "Because he showed he was there. What else could he do?" 10 years later, in 1988, when Enzo Ferrari died, thousands came. Politicians, journalists, world leaders. But Laura wasn't there. Laura had died 10 years earlier, quietly, alone, after 62 years of marriage with a 10-minute goodbye. This is the story of the woman Enzo Ferrari left behind. Laura Domenica Garello was born in 1900, northern Italy, middle-class family, strong-willed, intelligent, independent. She met Enzo Ferrari in 1923. Back then, Enzo was just a racer, not famous, not rich, but ambitious. Laura believed, supported. They married the same year. The first years were hard. No money, no stability. Enzo was constantly at races. Laura waited, but didn't complain. In 1929, the factory opened in Maranello. Laura worked there, accounting, administrative tasks, beside Enzo. In 1932, their son Dino was born. The next 15 years were Laura's happiest, not perfect. Enzo was a cold man, but they were a family. Until 1957, June 30th, 1957. Dino died. Enzo didn't attend the funeral. Laura sat alone in the front row. From that day, something broke. Close workers noticed. Enzo escaped to the factory, stayed there from morning to night, sometimes never came home. Laura was alone at home. The first months, she waited. He's grieving. Time will heal. It didn't. A year later, Enzo still wasn't talking. When he came home, he said nothing. Factory workers recall Laura came to the factory one day to see Enzo. The secretary said, "He's in a meeting." Laura waited for hours. Enzo never came out. Laura went home. This pattern continued for years. In the early 1960s, Laura was mostly at home. Sometimes she'd go to the factory for social duty, but she was no longer a partner, just a name. A worker recalled years later. Signora Laura would sometimes come for tea. She'd watch the factory through the window, never said anything, just looked. Evenings, Enzo would come late, go to bed without eating. Laura would sit alone in the kitchen, 40 years of marriage. But the loneliness was heavy. In the late 1950s, Enzo started eating regularly at a restaurant in Maranello. A woman worked there, Lina Lardi. Over time, a relationship developed. In 1962, Lina gave birth to a son, Piero Lardi. Enzo regularly visited Lina, saw Piero, built a second family. Maranello was a small town. Everyone knew. Laura knew too. Around 1963, Laura learned the situation. Available testimonies and her subsequent behavior show the same thing. She accepted it silently. She went to the factory less, attended fewer social events. A close friend recalled years later, "Laura once said, 'Enzo has two lives, One with me, on paper, one with someone else in reality. But what can I do? I can't divorce. In Italy, it's a scandal. At least I have a home, a name. She never filed for divorce, never asked for separation. Maybe she had no other choice. Maybe she loved him, maybe both. The 1960s, the 1970s. For 20 years, Laura lived with this situation. At official events, she'd stand beside Enzo, play the role of Signora Ferrari. But in private life, she was alone. In the 1970s, her health declined. In 1978, she fell seriously ill. Enzo visited, once, briefly, asked how she was. "I'm fine," Laura said. A nurse later asked, "Your husband loves you very much, doesn't he?" Laura's answer wasn't recorded, but her expression was a sad smile. In 1978, Laura died. Her funeral was small, family, a few workers. Enzo came, stayed 10 minutes, touched the coffin, said nothing, left. A worker. He never cried. Maybe there was nothing left to cry about. Maybe Laura's death was just the official end of a relationship that had ended long ago. 10 years later, in 1988, Enzo died. His funeral was massive. Thousands of people, politicians, journalists, world leaders. In the front row sat 2 women. One, officially, was nothing. But she had been in Enzo's life for 30 years, Lena Lardi. The other was Laura's absence. An empty chair, the official wife, but dead for 10 years. When the will was read, Enzo had left the factory to Piero. Lena's son, to Laura, a house, some money, and the name she already carried. The press reacted. Ferrari ignored his wife. But Laura couldn't answer. Laura had been in the ground for 10 years. Today, in Maranello, there is no monument to Laura Ferrari. There is one for Dino, engine, car, building. There isn't one for Lena, but her son Piero ran the company. Laura, just a gravestone. Laura Ferrari, 1900 to 1978. There are no easy answers in this story. Was Laura a victim? Yes, but she also chose to stay. Maybe she had no other choice. Maybe she loved him. Was Enzo cruel? He was cold, distant. But he was also a man frozen after losing Dino. He suffered too. But he made Laura suffer as well. Was Lena guilty? She was also a woman, also in a relationship, also living a life. In this story, if you look for bad, you'll find it. But if you look for why, you'll find something harder. Silence. Laura Ferrari was a man's official life for 62 years, but she was never the center of his real life. She was at the beginning. She wasn't at the end. She was around, never inside. Have you ever been in a situation where someone was yours on paper, but someone else's in reality? Have you ever lived in a relationship where you didn't know whether to stay or leave? This is episode 11 of Enzo Ferrari, The Defining Silences. In previous episodes, we saw Ferrari's refusals. In this episode, we see a different kind of refusal. Silent refusal. Daily refusal. Refusal that lasted years. Ferrari never said no to Laura, but he never said yes either. He just wasn't there. And maybe that's the most painful part. Accepting an open refusal is easy. Carrying a silent refusal takes 58 years. Laura carried it.